All right, so back to Pong. Let's see. We finished step 7, where we had a way of finishing the game with we added our finish procedure. And now we're on to step 8, going further. So let's see how else we can improve this game here. So it's good. I brought this up before, but it's always good to keep in mind. What you want to do is build something basic that works, and then you can always improve it, do things to improve it, right? So we have something that's actually playable now, and now we can, from that base, we can start seeing what else we can do to make it a little nicer. Okay, so this first headline says, stay on your side. Let's see what that's about. It says, now your paddle can move anywhere on the page. So when we click on the paddle, it can go all over the place. Here's a hint. In many games, the paddle can only move up and down and not sideways. So, and in fact, if you go online, you can find a lot of these free Pong games. If you look at this one here, I'm going to click to play here. I can. Does this one let me move with the mouse? Oh yeah, I'm moving the guy on the left actually. That's right. So this paddle, I'm moving the paddle on the left here with my mouse. But you can see if I move my mouse over this way, it doesn't make any difference. The paddle stays all the way over to the left. Right? So all right, let me stop playing. This is too much fun. I think if I just restarted it. Okay. So I want to do something like that where I can move my mouse up and down. It doesn't matter if I go side to side. It'll only stay over on the side here. So let's see. Here's a hint about how to do that. When using set pause, mouse pause. So that's what we used, right? If we go look in the backpack here, is that where it is? I think it's in our. Let's look on our on click here. Yeah, it just says set pause, mouse pause in the on click. So when using set pause, mouse pause, remember we talked about how mouse pause is a reporter that, I didn't make a picture of it, did I? Mouse pause is a reporter that reports the position of the turtle. So this is how we did set H minus heading. If we did this set pause, mouse pause, we would only have 2 of these boxes, right? We would have one that's kind of the same shape as this heading box called mouse pause. And out of there would come a list, a X and a Y. Instead of just the number, one number, it would be a list, a X and a Y. And that would get fed into set pause, which would set our position according to that X and Y. So it says when using set pause, mouse pause reports a list containing 2 items, the mouse's X coordinate and the mouse's Y coordinate. If you just want to change the paddle's Y coordinate, so if the Y coordinate, remember, that's the one that goes up and down, so that's the only one really we want to change. If you just want to change the paddle's Y coordinate, change the paddle's on-click instruction. Use the command set Y to set the paddle's position to the last item reported by mouse pause. The instruction would look like this: set Y to last mouse pause. So let's try to figure out why that is. So first of all, if we want to look at mouse pause, we say show mouse pause. It does like that. So it's 2 numbers, right? It's a X and a Y. So if we tried to say like forward mouse pause, it doesn't like that as input. Okay, so, and notice it does show you here as a list. When you use the show command, it writes lists without the brackets, because that's what the show command does. But really, this is a list of two numbers, okay, an X and a Y, and you can't use a list as input to forward, okay, but you can use a list as input to set pause. So if I said set pause mouse pause, okay, that works. Okay, so the mouse pause is considered, I guess that's the last place the mouse was before I swooped down here or something. But anyway, since it's a list, you can also operate it on it with this last reporter. So let's take a look at last in help here. So last, that's not one of the procedures that we wrote up ourselves. That's one of the built-in procedures. Let's find it. So last. So if it's not one that we created ourselves, it better be one that's in here if we're going to be able to use it, right? Or we need to write it. So last is the name of the procedure, of the primitive procedure that's already been built for you. And its input is a word or a list, okay? So it needs one input, okay? So, but notice it can have a list as an input. It can have a word as an input, or it can have a list as an input. It reports the last component of the word or the list, okay? So if we have a list of things, let's see, what does it say for you? This looks kind of complicated. Sometimes these examples might have more stuff in them than you've learned about yet, but so it might be more helpful instead of using this example, maybe just making up our own example. So what if we said, well, since this is a list, since mouse pause is a list, the last element in the list is a number, and forward does take numbers as inputs, right? So we could say forward last. Well, let's make sure we know what the mouse pause is at this point. Let's see, mouse pause. Okay, so see, it's changed because I moved the mouse in between times. So let's try to go now forward last mouse pause. Okay, so now what happens? Remember how we said you can kind of string these procedures together like this. So when we said set h minus heading, we got the heading of 70 and fed that into the minus procedure, and that turned the 70 into a minus 70 and fed that to the set h. So similarly, what we're saying here is forward needs one input. So we get to the end of that word forward, we find a space. So we know FD is the procedure name we need to look up, and we look it up, and actually that is one of the primitive procedures that you can find in the vocabulary. And it doesn't matter really if it's one you found in the vocabulary or if it's one of these words. As far as logo is concerned, it's just basically the same thing because it just means it's a word I know. Okay, so he gets to FD. He knows FD, but he knows that FD needs an input. So he's going to go and say to this next guy, "Are you an input, or can you give me an input?" Well, last turns out to be another procedure name. So last says, "Yeah, I can give you an input, but I need an input myself first. I need a word or a list." So we go to mouse pause. Mouse pause gives us a list. The last thing in the list is minus 356. So mouse pause gives this list of two things. Last pulls out the last word in the list and gives that to forward. So we're going to go forward minus 356. Let's see what that looks like. We're going to go forward by minus 356. Okay, so it almost looked like we're going forward, so it might depend also on let's see what our heading was. Go to state, our heading 0. What's mouse pause right now? So maybe because we went so far, it looks like we went forward, but we actually went back and then came around and looked this way or something. But anyway, so that's what last does. Last pulls out the second thing in mouse pause. And the second thing in mouse pause is the y coordinate of the mouse, right? So if we use set y last, let's go in here. So instead of saying set pause mouse pause, we can say set y, because because set pause needs a list, right? Set y needs a number, and set y, if you give set y one number, it'll set the y coordinate, but it won't do anything with the x coordinate. So we want to say set y. Well, set y, if we just said set y mouse pause, what happens? Set y does not like a list as input. Set y just wants one of these, and actually the one we want to give it is the last one, because that's the y coordinate of the mouse. Okay, so if we say set y last mouse pause. Now this is already kind of running off out of the on-click field here. So I'm going to take this whole thing and I'm going to say cut, and I'm just going to call this handle click. I'm going to write a procedure called handle click that handles any clicking on this paddle. And since it's going to be just for the paddle, I'm going to put it in the procedures tab for the paddle. I'm going to make my procedure to handle click. So I'm writing my definition. I need to say to, and I need to end it with end. And in the middle, I'm going to paste in that stuff that I had before in the click instruction field, because this is just easier to read. Now I can always flip back here, and if I decide to change what handle click does, I just change it in here. If I want to add more stuff to it, or I can make those changes here, and rules will always just do handle click. Okay. So let's see. If you make this change, you may want to set the x coordinate of the paddle in your get started procedure. Why would we want to do that? Well, let's see. Let's click here and get started. Use the mouse to control the paddle, but now look, I can't move it back over here, which is where I want it, right? So because I can't change the x position, I can only change the y position. So my game's over. No, I don't want to play again. Oops. So let's see what we can do in get started. We told the ball to go to set pause 0, 0. Let's tell the paddle to set. How about just set x to, what's a good place for it to be? Maybe around here. Let's see what our x coordinate is here. We'll open the backpack and go to the state tab, and see it shows the x core 187. So see, if I move this back and forth, see now the x core is 27. So now the x core is 1. So maybe around 190 would be good, right? So if I say set x to 190, that'll set the x core at the beginning of the game. So even if by some funkiness we ended up over here, if I say go, it'll set the x core to right there. And now I can move up and down and play my game. Alright, and it looks like you play until you miss 3 times, and then you're all done. So I'll go ahead and let myself miss. 2, 1, yoink, game over. Okay. No, and really, you could type in anything in here besides yes, and it'll stop, right? Because we're comparing the answer to yes here. But that's just a little cheat that you know because you programmed it. Okay, so that's how we program the paddle to stay along one side. And let's save our work. And the next time we'll see about adding in some bricks, it looks like.